Hey guys, welcome to Under the Arch Sports. I'm Eric Hobbs.
And I'm David Woldingen.
And right now we're going to preview the top 25 matchup that we didn't know we were going to get. It's number 6, Mizzou, against number 24, Boston College. Before we begin with that, please guys go ahead, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and find us on Facebook, Instagram, X, and on Spotify. Yeah, David, it's not what we were expecting. This is something where at the beginning of the season, everyone was thinking, okay, get through the 4 cupcakes and the season really begins at A&M. Well, no, season begins this week. Top 25 matchup. Boston College already got everybody's attention just destroying Florida State.
Yeah, and then they turn around against, what was it, Tequez
Duquesne.
or Duquesne. I can never say that school's name right. Uh, but they turn around and put up 55 on them, have a really good game there. So kind of a repeat performance, if you will.
Yeah.
Just raising eyebrows in the ACC over there. I mean, gotta be honest, can't tell how good Florida State really is. Kind
Yeah.
of a hot mess over there right now. So still a lot of question marks on that side of things. But this is good news for Mizzou because one, everybody was complaining that their schedule was super weak. Now that's in terms of SEC and whatnot, it's still like the 17th best schedule in the country. But having another ranked team at a conference going up against the Tigers at home, I mean, nothing better than that, honestly.
And with the way the rest of the SEC looks, I wouldn't be surprised if Boston College finishes the season inside the top 20. We were talking about their schedule, them winning 10 games. I don't know if I'm ready to say I expect it, but it wouldn't surprise me. But that's a whole nother conversation. Motivation is going to be interesting for this game, David, for Boston College because of the schedule. Kind of as we alluded to, they don't play anyone in the top 25 the rest of the season, aside from Louisville, who's currently ranked 19th. No one else remaining on their schedule is in the top 25. And this is for them, the biggest game they have, really. Uh, that maybe ACC that factors in, but in terms of non-conference, it's as big as they've had in a long time. The Boston College has not had a ranked versus ranked non-conference matchup since 1993. In that game, they beat Notre Dame.
Who was number
Now,
one?
somewhere out there, Northern Illinois is saying, "What's so hard about that?" But you got to go back that far. Mizzou hadn't played a ranked versus ranked non-conference game since 2008, Illinois game at the Dome. And this is not including bowls. Keep that in mind, regular season. So, yeah, very exciting. And 2 weeks ago, this was not something we thought we were going to have. So, you have all that. Boston College have that motivation. Biggest game on their schedule, perhaps. Mizzou, their bulletin board material, their motivation is pretty simple. They have guys who were in Chestnut Hill in 2021 and remember that debacle.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't even think they need bulletin board material. You're the sixth ranked team in the country. You know
Yeah.
everyone's going to be gunning for you. And you just alluded into the fact that some of their fans, maybe even their players, think this is going to be possibly their Super Bowl, if you will, because it's the strongest team they'll be playing all year. So quite honestly, as a player, as a coach, you know it's going to take your focus and you have to be clicking on all cylinders in order to come out of this unscathed, if you will.
Yeah. One guy for Boston College who's not making too big a deal of this is their receiver, Lewis Bond, was quoted Tuesday as basically saying, Mizzou's nothing more than a football team. I played, and he said something along the lines of, I played the SEC once and we won. So I don't think he was trying to trash talk or provide bulletin board material. Drinkwitz maybe could try to spin that into something of the sort, but that revenge factor is, I think, key. Drinkwitz called that one of the low moments of his career. Brady Cook was on that team. Connor Tallis in the center on that team. Mookie Cooper was on that team. Dalen Carnell on the defensive side, he was on that team. None of them were major factors on the field in that game, but they were there. They remember how the team felt when that game ended and the trip back. So that motivation's all I think this team needs. And let's be honest with ourselves. It could be a bit of a blessing for Mizzou in terms of not overlooking the Golden Eagles, that little number 24 is right next to BC's name.
Well, and one other factor is you have who is it? Corey Flagg and then
Yeah.
Coriano Pride, who both played against BC last year in the
Yeah.
ACC.
ACC transfers from Miami and Clemson.
So they both have a little background on what they're going up against too, and can really help out the defense. Just give them an idea of what's coming their way.
Yeah. And if to put it very briefly, what's coming the way of the Missouri defense in this game? A whole lot of running game. The Boston College, in a game they control, I think would like to throw the ball between 15 and 20 times and run the ball between 40 and 50. Part of that is including the quarterback, who is critical of this offense, Thomas Castellanos, who is very mobile and but not that big. He's 5'9", 196 is what he's listed as. I was surprised to see that, but he is absolutely a factor with his legs as well as his arm. And David, you got the experience with the line. Assignment football.
Yeah, it's very much assignment football. You got to hold your gaps. You can't get too far upfield. There could be a lot of draw plays. We were talking kind of like Brad Smith-esque, where you take a two drop step back and then just take off when a running lane opens up. As It's going to be very important, especially on the inside, because Boston College loves running right down the gut,
Yeah.
because their offensive line probably has three or four potential NFL draftees on it. So
Oh, they're
they're
huge.
they're massive. They know what they're doing. They're very good at what they do, and they're very fundamentally sound. So, in all honesty, this is going to be a game where the D line and the D ends have to be very disciplined to create a pocket and force him to stay in a pocket.
Yeah.
Uh, and you don't want to stretch that pocket too far, because all has to do is one little glimpse of light and he's off and gone. The other thing is the linebackers are going to be very important in this game, because with the D line playing assignment football, they're going to be the ones that have to come up and fill those run gaps that
Mm-hmm.
are open. So, with their speed and the talent that we've seen in the first two games, I think it's going to be huge. And I think it could be strength on strength, quite honestly. So, it's going to be a fun matchup to see these two teams go at each other.
You mentioned the linebackers and the speed. I think that's going to be huge just because one, the first two games we've talked about how the speed at the linebacker position is something we've not seen on a Missouri team. Gosh, probably since before we ever went to Mizzou, generations since Missouri had this kind of speed at the position. And that's something that really potentially is going to help and make this into a favorable matchup for the Tigers. You know, aside from Castellanos, you got a pair of running backs that you have to look out for. You got Trayshawn Ward, and then you also have Kai Robichaux. All right. Both are getting used relatively evenly through two games. I'm going to be honest, I didn't even look at the stats against Duquesne, but very briefly, because what are we going to learn? It's an FCS game massacre. You know what I mean? So you look at the Florida State game. and the team ran for 263 yards. Robichaux with 85, Ward with 77, and then Castellanos with 73 of his own. All three in double digit for carries. Robichaux got the most with 19 in that game. So I think you may maybe see him as your workhorse, so to speak. I don't think he'll be out there getting 30 carries against Missouri, but if they need something, I think he's the guy aside from Castellanos. So yeah, running. It's really what it's going to come down to for this Mizzou defense. But Castellanos can throw the football. You know, the numbers aren't going to wow you against Florida State. 10 of 16, 106 yards, 42 of that on one play that was a busted coverage where the pass was 10 yards and the rest of the way because of busted coverage. He was wide open. The running backs, they did a good job against the Seminoles of getting lost kind of in the line and running those wheel routes, David, that just left them wide open.
Yeah, and if I have one concern about Mizzou's defense is we don't know how good our secondary is right now. And
Yeah.
if you're on an island playing man because you have everybody inside the box matched up, um, even against Buffalo, there were a couple busted coverages, especially a wheel route that they had a wide open guy down the left side that they just flat missed because, talent.
Yep.
Um, that would have been a sure touchdown, quite honestly. So there is a question mark on the pass coverage side of things. So I could even see in the Boston College play calling plan to come out and just start slinging the ball all over the place to surprise us and see what happens. It could be a very interesting chess game going on.
That would be a surprise, I think. But Bill O'Brien's a good coach. And goodness, he's done this place after place, collegiately and at the NFL, where he takes over and they are immediately better and he gets them good. And this, as you said, disciplined and frankly, efficient, effective, maximizing their ability. That's what this Boston College offense is doing. Now, David, let's talk about the Missouri offense going against Boston College's defense here. I think the first thing to really discuss is penalties
Mm.
because in both games, there have been a lot, and they've been a lot of them kind of mental, just kind of discipline. And what I mean is lining up improperly so that a receiver is covered up and you have ineligible downfield, illegal formation, someone in the backfield shouldn't be, and holding calls where in the press conference, Drinkwitz was saying that they were stupid calls essentially because they'd establish leverage, they'd have them, but then they wouldn't let go once they started chasing after the ball carrier who was starting to go down the field or whatever, and turning it into a hold that way. So I think discipline from the offensive line with holding, and the receivers just lining up right. I think penalties like that are going to hurt a whole heck of a lot more than they did in the first two games. Missouri could simply out talent the first two opponents. And while I think Missouri is probably more talented than Boston College, it's not so decided that they can get away with 10, 12 penalties in this game.
Yeah, and while Missouri has the ability to have explosive plays, they have not done that yet. Granted, I think they were working on things in the Buffalo game in a sense of they knew Buffalo was going to play cover two, so they took everything underneath and played the short game, and it looked like
Yeah.
Brady was working on his timing. People said he was still throwing off. His throwing was off. He was high a little bit. He had a 77% pass completion.
Yeah.
The two deep balls he threw were right on the money, quite honestly. One of them should have been caught by Theo
Yep.
Weiss, and
Yep.
the other was a pass interference penalty. That one would
Yeah.
have been
It
caught
was a
too.
touchdown for Speedy Johnson if not for the PI.
Yeah. So quite honestly, those balls were beautiful. Uh those but I mean there were only two of them, but at the same time, they didn't really try go for it, and they tried to go for a real methodical offense, which I think is going to be the name of the game against Boston College, because you need to be able to take time off the clock, give your defense a rest. Even though we have a really deep defense, you're still going to want to give them some time to recuperate, especially
Yep.
if Boston College is just going to chew the clock by running every play.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's where Nate Noel, Marcus Carroll, where they're going to come in. And to this point, everything's been split pretty 50-50. I'm curious to see if Drinkwitz does that in this game, or if now that, yeah, I think we're expecting a more competitive game. If it turns into a situation of maybe it's pretty even in the first half and in the second half, see if someone has kind of the hot hand and just ride them for that for the rest of the game.
Hmm. Now, it's also worth noting that Cameron Johnson is listed as questionable.
Yeah.
Drink said he could have gone last week, but they decided to hold him out as precautionary. Bretton Norfleet also questionable. It sounded like a couple days ago that possibly Vandy he might be coming back, but then in his presser today he kind of alluded that it could be possible he could come back and play.
Yeah.
I don't expect to see him until maybe A&M,
That's
honestly.
what I'm thinking.
Um
I will believe Norfleet is available when I see him go onto the field,
yeah, that's
take
kind of
snap.
a gamemanship thing. For everybody
Yep.
who is wondering what happened to Burden, he had some kind of illness. He should be good to go. Same with Theo Weiss.
Yep.
Both are considered
Both
probable.
probable, yeah. You know, the one thing I want to see with the offense throwing wise is I want to see some crossing routes, in
Mm.
particular to Luther Burden. When you get Luther Burden the ball in the middle of the field and you're not forcing it to him, but like through some jet sweep or something, but you are throwing it to him where there are other viable options. I think that that's dangerous, and it's not something we've really seen where you've got the rest of the secondary, on their man if they're in a cover one, especially, and then Burden has one, maybe two guys to make miss, and it's 30 yards or more, right?
Well,
That's
and I
something
just
we
think
haven't seen, and that's where he's at his most dangerous.
I think just the Florida game from last year, that 4th and 17, where he just found
Yeah.
a spot and sat down in the middle. None of his routes so far have really been down the field, and that's something I think will change, and I want to see change.
I don't see the reason really to do it, but at the same time, part of me wonders if this isn't like 2023, where the first two games, it was a super boring offense. And then against Kansas State, the whole thing looked different. Either way, I don't imagine it would be that drastic of a change, but I wouldn't be surprised at this point, even though it seems unnecessary.
Well, it just might be the play calling mentality is going to be different in this game. They know they can open up the whole playbook and do whatever needs to be done. Whereas Buffalo game, they knew they could do whatever they wanted, so they worked on things type
Oh
deal.
yeah, well, and that applies to the defense as well. You did not see anything resembling an exotic kind of look or blitz package. It was pretty much base defense all the way around for Missouri in these first two games on both sides of the ball. Um, yeah, I think it'll get more imaginative, frankly, because Boston College is going to give Missouri their first actual adversity. This could be a thing where Boston College is winning after the first quarter, at halftime even. And Missouri has to adjust and they have to go deeper into the playbook to figure out what's going to slow down the Golden Eagles. So that's something that I think will be very interesting to see. On to predictions, David. We got so lucky with our pick when Jamal Roberts got that garbage time touchdown with 31 seconds to go.
I can't tell you how happy I was to see that happen.
Oh my gracious. Um, for those not sure what we're talking about. That garbage time touchdown with 30 seconds to go when Mizzou could have taken a knee, that was the difference between Mizzou covering the spread and not. Depending on on your book, when you bet all that, 33 and a half, 34 and a half. Well, that went from 31 to 38 right there. So backdoor cover for both of us on this one. We're now both 1-1 on the season. Uh against the spread, that is, I should say. You know, I think this this line, I don't like it. I think it's too big, to be honest with you. I think Boston College getting disrespected by that line, honestly. I'm surprised that the money line, Missouri's like minus 700 to win the game. I was surprised by that. I think this will be a little bit like the Memphis game a year ago, where Missouri gets a lead but cannot separate themselves. I think Boston College is going to hang around, maybe get uncomfortably close in the fourth quarter. I've got Missouri holding on for a top 25 win. I got them 33 to 24.
Yeah, and that line is what, 16, minus 16 right
Depending on
now.
where you look, 16, 16 and a half, even 17.
And kind of what you're saying, I honestly think it's a line to get people to bet on Boston College. So I could see this by game time moving down to a 14 or
Yeah.
13, if you will. I have Mizzou, and you're thinking along the lines I am. I have Mizzou winning 31-21. Um, Quite honestly, is one of the harder games I've had to predict just because we don't know what's going to happen. Mizzou hasn't really played anybody with a true offense, so we don't know how good the defense really is.
Yeah.
Our offense, we know what it can be, but at this point, it's looked unimpressive. Really, really solid, but unimpressive. Uh, but we know what it can do and the potential it can do. So I'm going to go ahead and say 31-21. Mizzou wins by 10. However, it wouldn't surprise me if they won by a lot more. And it also wouldn't really surprise me if it was a lot closer than that. So it's definitely going to be a really interesting game to watch because I think it's the first true test.
Yeah.
Uh,
There's
and
so
we'll get
much.
a
This is a hard one to pick.
yeah, and we'll get a real
Because,
good idea of what we have.
oh, yeah, there is a world where Mizzou goes out and wins this thing 34 to 10 or something. And I think gets everybody's attention because Boston College has that respect and credibility from beating Florida State. I think there's a world where that happens. I think it's very possible, but I think Boston College is game. So exciting times, guys. Big matchup. And David, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, another sold out game. It's going to be loud. It's going to be fun. I just wish it wasn't 11:45. But that's neither here nor there. Uh, anyway, that's our preview for the Mizzou game coming up. Make sure you watch our post game stuff once we get that out after the game, and we'll evaluate things and tell you what we think of it. And continue to watch us here at Under the Arch Sports. Thank you guys.